Welcome everyone to Clarity 15.9.1 Supportability Training and the Usability Improvement section. I'm going to cover off on 5 topics in this section, starting with the ability to aggregate per period metrics using group by. So per period metrics, or TSVs, can be aggregated within staff, assignments, and financials modules across projects, ideas, and custom investments using the group by. Rich text formatting. You now have the ability to format text fields using standard tools that we use in our daily lives around bold, underline, italics, etc. So the next piece is there's actually within the financials module, there is a new actuals transaction grid. Just happens to be read-only, but that's now available for financials across projects, ideas, and custom investments. We've also added some additional, more advanced filter options, including things like equals, not equals, empty, not empty. There's a few others that I'll talk about in a second. Last but not least is the related to our board, and particularly the cards themselves and the hyperlink associated with the name or the title, where we reduce the target zone of that hyperlink to improve usability. So usability improvements, again, why is this important? The group by, the aggregation. As soon as we brought out the grids, the new common component grid, customers were asking for the ability to aggregate the contents on the screen almost immediately. So this release definitely is going to help drive adoption, delivering that group by capability. Rich text formatting. Again, this is kind of a quality of life improvement to help drive the adoption and provide users with tools that are consistent with other enterprise applications. From an actual transition grid perspective, you've got improved financial visibility now with this grid. It's read-only, but it's for financials across project ideas and custom investments. The advanced filter options, again, customers have requested greater flexibility to search for and retrieve information. And lastly, on the board card link thing, customers reported that their users were inadvertently navigating to the investment details while simply trying to move or review a card from one column to another, for example. And so obviously it was creating some angst. So this change eliminates those unnecessary and unwanted clicks. So if we look at the first piece here, the aggregating per period metrics. So the upper right corner is a staff grid, staff module that you've seen before. It's got those new per period metrics in there for remaining allocation, remaining availability as an example. And they're not aggregated. It's just a list view. So in the bottom example here, we're grouping by role. And you now see the aggregation across those roles. And I've expanded the architect window just so you see the details there, but you're seeing at that line item, it's the aggregation of the allocations, hard bookings, remaining allocation, remaining availability. It's doing all the necessary calculations to aggregate the information. Super powerful capability now available in our these following grids: staff, assignments, and financials. Rich text formatting. This is a big hit. Just an example on the right-hand side of using those various tools. We've actually introduced a new attribute. It's called large string rich text. So you need to use that attribute in the modern UX to now then take advantage of these capabilities, whether it's in a flyout or a properties page. Just as a side note, there was an unrelated to rich text formatting, but it's related to formatting. We made an update to the sort order of the task section within the living status report to match that of the task timeline view. So the task list is now sorted by WBS sort, work breakdown structure, versus the last updated date. So in the prior release, if you went into the task section of the status report, you had a sort order that was different than what you were probably looking at in the task timeline view. So now those are in sync to be automatically sorted by WBS. Just as a FYI there, but unrelated to rich test formatting, but it's related to formatting to a certain extent. Financials, the actual transaction grid for improved financial visibility. We've included this actual transaction grid. It's read-only in this release. We certainly will approve upon that for projects, ideas, and custom investments. And the right-hand side shows the column panel associated with that. You can bring in any kinds of things that you want into the grid. This is a fully functioning, quote unquote, common grid component with export to CSV, group by, sorting, filtering, and the flyout, etc. Save views. The advanced filtering options, this one I'm going to spend a little bit of time on just because there's a lot of content here. We've provided some additional filtering options across these data types, these 5 data types here, from OBS, number, lookup string, and date. I've got them all articulated here on this slide, and I want you to pay attention to the different options or operators that are available to you when you select OBS, is equal to or empty, lookup. You got equal to or empty. When you pick a number, you've got a great number of additional operators that you can choose from with respect to number, likewise for string, and then date. So a major improvement, a big ask from our customers. The last piece here is really the board card. You can see the highlighted area on each of these cards represents the target zone for that link. So on the upper right-hand side, related to 15.9, the target zone was pretty big. So no matter where you were, you could inadvertently navigate yourself away from the board view and into an investment. And so the left-hand side is just a smaller target area that increases usability and less frustration for the users of inadvertently navigating away. Okay, so I'm going to get into the demo here. We're going to cover off on these 5 things. We're going to look at the staff module and talk about the aggregated per period metrics using group by. We'll take a look at the large string rich text attribute. I'm actually not going to configure one, but I'll show you the end result in Studio, and we'll look at how it behaves in the application. We'll look at the actual transaction grid in the financials module. We'll take a look at some of the advanced filtering options. Equal to, not equal, empty, not empty. And then we'll touch the board card here at the end. Okay, let me switch from PowerPoint to the application. And we're back at our project list. I'm going to look at the group by here. We're going to go into the just get rid of that. We'll go into this particular investment. We're going to look at the financials module. I'm going to select the plan of record. And I'm here at a fairly straightforward cost plan, right? It's got our per period metrics across October, November, December, etc. But I'm going to drag the cost type to the group by zone, and it's aggregating my information. Love it. I'm going to expand the operating group, and I can just see the details that are there rolling up to the aggregate. Fairly straightforward example, but it shows the power of our aggregation capabilities. I'm going to go into our plan to actuals view, and you can see my per period metrics here across the board and my totals. These are attributes that were brought in the prior release, so nothing new per se here. However, I'm going to take my transaction class and drop it in the group by zone. And there again, I get my my aggregation, and I'll just expand hardware, and you can see the details that are adding up to the summary. So super powerful feature here to aggregate content. And again, this is added to staff assignments and the financials modules for project ideas and custom investments. So I'm just showing an example here in the financials module. All right, let's skip over to rich text editing. I'll come back to our project list and we'll talk about this big quality of life improvement to help people and to help drive adoption. You can provide tools with capabilities that they expect and use in other kind of enterprise tools. All right, so one thing I do want to do is I'm going to go to Classic real quick. Just want to show you the results of the attribute, this new attribute called large string rich text. I'm going to go to Object. You can attach it to multiple objects as you would assume through Studio. I'm going to go into Project. I'm going to look at the attributes. And I named this thing rich text formatting. And there's a couple here. There's a description that I've added and an objective. I'll go into description real quick. And the thing I wanted you to pay attention to is just the data type, large string rich text. And obviously it's API enabled so that it comes through to the modern UX. And this capability is only available in the modern UX. Okay, let's go back to the main screen here, the project grid. I'm going to highlight this and bring up my details pane. And I kind of expanded this ahead of schedule here, but you can see, I remember we named this description RTF because there's a description field already, and I just happened to use name it RTF to differentiate here. So that's the only reason that I'm pointing that out. But of course, it's got you know, all the tools available to me, and I've configured the size of the field just like any other any other field through configure. So I'm taking advantage of larger text, a header, a link, you know, bullets, highlighting, underlining, colorization. It's got all these tools that you would expect to see in an RTF, rich text editor. One other thing I want to show you is while we're here on the grid is I've got I didn't include the description RTF in the grid, so I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to bring that into the grid, and I'm going to scroll over here. I'll just bring it into the middle here so we can play with it. But the point is, as you're scanning the grid, you definitely don't appreciate the fact that there's some content here that may be formatted with the rich text editor. All you have to do is double click into it, and there it is, and you're presented with the information, and you can actually use the editing tools directly here from the cell without actually being in the flyout. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. Let's go back to and go dive deeper into this project. I'll go to the properties page or properties module. And it's the objective. So I remember I added another objective using the large string text field, and this is just another example of how it shows up in the properties page. And it allows you to use all these tools. The next thing I want to talk about is the living status report. So you can see there's a key accomplishments attribute in terms of the large string rich text attribute that's been added to the this attribute, and I configured it to show up right here in the grid so that you get to take advantage of all that formatting capability, but it also ends up in the PDF output. So here I haven't published it yet, but you can see the example real time. There's my formatting that is available there directly in the status report. So it's WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. So we'll just go back to the current here. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about while we're in this project is go to the transaction grid, the actual transaction grid. So here we have another sub-tab, if you will, available to us inside this financials module. I just happen to do a group by, but I'll take away all of that. So we basically have now a read-only view, but like I said earlier, this is a fully functioning common grid or common grid component, complete with export to CSV, column movement, the column panel to bring in whatever you want. There's a flyout should you wish to look at particular information in more detail. Filtering across, any number of attribute, right? The save views, etc. So all this is here for your benefit. I'll go ahead and kind of group this by, let me get rid of the filter window here, by resource, and I can see what Jason Berry's been up to over the past couple of months or weeks. So again, this is doing some aggregation as well as performing a group by here across all those transactions. So there you go. Let's move on to the advanced filtering options. So I want to talk about kind of the things such as equals, not equals, empty or not empty. So I'm going to go back to our project list. And one of the ways you can use the new filter parameters, well, let's talk about from a data quality perspective. So I've got a couple filters in here already, fairly straightforward. I want to add a filter here for work status, and I want to make sure all the information that I'm expecting people to capture is in fact being captured. So I'm going to look at, is work status empty? So I'm going to look for missing data. So there it is, work status. There's one that didn't have a properly representation. I'm going to fix that for this person because I know what's going on. Or I was, reach out and touch someone to have them fix that. Another example is using these filters is the scenario here. I want to look at, I'm going to add a filter for finish date. I want to look at all my projects that are going to be completed before the end of our fiscal quarter. So these are all the additional filter parameters. But before this release, all you had was is between. You could pick a date and a date, from to. So that was the between. So now we can say is before, and I'm going to go, I want to know what's coming up. Let's plan for delivery before the end of the quarter. So I can say, how are things coming along? Right away, I can see some flags here. There's a on hold. This release is on hold. That's not encouraging given we're coming up on the end of our quarter, and this major product is on hold. Major project is on hold. So that allows me some, great tools to go back and talk to these folks to figure out what's going on. Why are they behind the 8 ball here? Let's see. The last thing I want to touch on is our board view. So while I'm here in this particular project listing, I'm going to go to our board view. Let me take out that filter on finish. And I've got my cards back. Let me show you 15.9 first. So I'm going to go to the projects. I'm going to go to, let's see, projects. Yeah, I think that's where I want to be. And we're going to look at our board view. Here we are. So as you can tell, I mentioned that in the previous release, this target zone for the name was pretty broad. So you can see the line here underneath the URL, standard behavior indicates something is hot or active. I'm way over here and I can click and it takes me in. So that's kind of a nuisance for a lot of users that I have to be very precise. So I'm going to come back to 15.9 and you can see the target zone, as I move away, the target zone itself is no longer active. So we've definitely improved the experience there. I can click away to my heart's content. I'm not going to go anywhere until I select it. So that concludes the demo of the usability improvements.